There is a saying in China that it is 20 years, 100 years, 500 years, 2000 years. Xi'an was the capital of the most important dynasties of 2000 years ago. Beijing was the capital of the last two dynasties. Shanghai was the most important metropolis imported in the country for a century, and Shenzhen was the place that has grown the most in recent decades. Hi everyone, welcome to Mandarin Log. I'm Faye. Today we visit Shenzhen and introduce the city with the fastest metamorphosis in history. At first glance, Shenzhen may seem like another densely populated metropolis, but for entrepreneurs and programmers it's a veritable tech mecca. Shenzhen is considered the Chinese Silicon Valley, since the country's electronics and innovation industry is concentrated here. 40 years ago, Shenzhen was a small fishing town in Guangdong province, just north of Hong Kong. Today it is not only one of the fastest growing cities in the world, it is also a gigantic boiling technology center. The figures are impressive. This city is home to 6,000 manufacturers of electronic devices. Many of them as strong as unknown outside of China, but it is also home to two of the 5 largest phone companies in the world, Huawei and ZTE. Most of China's phones are produced in this city, and China produces more than half of the 2.5 billion cell phones sold worldwide each year. Shenzhen is also one of the largest ports in the world by container traffic. From 1980 to 2019, Shenzhen's GDP grew from $40 million to $400 million, with an annual growth of 20% of its GDP rate, which is a very high number, because when we talk about a figure of 6% annual, 7% annual, are already very high growth rates, and in fact, like the economy in general, let's say, of China, for example, when in the years that it grew the most, it grew at a rate of 10% and it was called the Chinese miracle. So within the Chinese miracle, a rate of 20% per year is really an incredible phenomenon. How did it go from being a fishing town to a modern metropolis with a permanent population of more than 13 million? In 1979, Shenzhen was declared a special economic zone, the first in China under the new policy of reform and opening up. The measure led to a rapid multi-million-dollar investment, both Chinese and foreign capital. The investment attracted thousands of immigrants and boosted the construction of factories and homes. The Shenzhen phenomenon was not an isolated case, but is part of China's transformation, known as the Chinese miracle. One of the most important changes of the 78 reform is the opening to foreign investment. This process began with the creation of special economic zones so that foreign companies could operate freely, which were relatively free of bureaucratic regulations and interventions that made their management difficult. At first there were 4 in the coastal region of the country: Xiamen, Shenzhen, Zhuhai and Shantou. The special economic zones became engines of growth for the national economy, since their production was mainly destined for export, allowing the country to have the necessary foreign currency to meet the requirements of imported inputs and equipment. The presence of foreign companies also contributed substantially to the modernization of the economic system, since it made it possible to incorporate technology and know-how both in specifically productive aspects and in organization and management. And this was done either through the creation of joint ventures between Chinese and foreigners or the actions of foreign companies that were eradicated in the country. Millions of Chinese workers, technicians, and managers have come to incorporate technical standards, engineering processes, and proper management practices to compete in world markets. In general terms, it can be said that China knew how to take advantage of the potential for delay. This means that he was able to take advantage of the fact that he was late. Then it was able to learn more developed nations and incorporate institutional, industrial and technological improvements at low cost and with little risk. However, the Chinese phenomenon did not end only by reaching the most advantaged economies, but in recent years there has been a clear sign of self-generated momentum. One of the things that most characterizes China is the speed of change. And this speed is what makes it so difficult for people from the West to understand China. Because, for example, abrupt changes not only occur from an economic point of view, but also from a social one. And for example, a paper from 3 or 4 years ago that talks about the reality of China, probably in the case of any other country, a paper from 3 or 4 years ago is still an updated paper, but in the case of China is probably already a modern history text, because the situation has already changed. And an example of this in the social field is, for example, the word of a leftover woman. About 5 years ago it was super fashionable to use this word to refer to girls who were more or less, over 25 or over 30 years old, who weren't married or who don't have boyfriends or whatever. But that word is no longer used today. And in fact, it is no longer socially accepted to say that to a woman, because society is incredible, but less than 5 years have passed and it has already changed. It's like the vision towards women, towards the independent woman, the single woman, the woman who works, changed in these few years. And that also happens in the economic field. So in all aspects, society advances very quickly. There are many people who are left with a vision of China from 5 years ago, a decade ago or even longer. And the truth is that this is completely outdated. This is a country that in 1 or 2 years already changes. Fashions change every year. New words also emerge every year. And it is not possible, let's say, like staying with a vision from a couple of years ago, because it no longer adapts to the current reality of the country. Shenzhen is where the country's economic revolution began. And now the companies that are based in this place compete at a much higher level in technological innovation and not only in low-cost production. There is already a whole community around the technological world, from bloggers, hackers, designers, entrepreneurs, who find this place a true paradise. A world of possibilities and opportunities that goes beyond mere production. Unlike Silicon Valley, whose development was based on semiconductors, Shenzhen's current development is based on smartphones. With an abundance of component parts of all kinds of hot words, Shenzhen is the ideal experimental location for startups. To really get an idea of what Shenzhen is all about, we have to know the following places. Huachengpe Market is a huge indoor market full of small stalls selling all kinds of electronic components. Someone savvy enough could easily walk away with the necessary parts to assemble their own computer, and at a very low price. There are entire markets dedicated to recycling a particular electronic device. An entire market for phones, another for laptops, another for TVs, etc. You can even buy phones built entirely from discarded parts. However, this description of this place is already out of date. Huachengpe has already lost the glory of the past. Since the use of cell phones has become widespread and the price has become more and more accessible for everyone, nowadays people can get a good original and cheap smartphone and the average purchasing power of the country has risen a lot. There is practically no one interested in buying fake or assembled cell phones anymore. A couple of years ago this was a huge market for appliance components and assemblies. But even back then it was not only copy and imitation, there were also creations and innovations. Many people bought the loose components to later create and make better versions. There is a lot of innovation and it tends to happen quickly every day without us realizing it. This has been the place where knowledge was shared and feedback was provided to break down, understand, learn and then innovate. Currently, Huachengpe still offers the components, but rather connects buyers with factories or technology companies. Shenzhen has become a magnet for young entrepreneurs looking to take advantage of the city's strategic position as the heart of the global technology supply chain. Super important startups such as DJI have been created here, which is dedicated to making photography and video drones. And this is the second place to understand Shenzhen, the DJI company. This is the company that leads drone productions for the mass public. G is the leader in the bunch and has done it without copying anyone and in just a few years. Many of your competitors have given up. G organizes the most important robotics competition in the world that takes place annually in the city of Shenzhen called RoboMaster. The venue for the weeks-long competition is the Shenzhen Bay Stadium. The winning team gets 500,000 yuan, so that's more than $70,000 and probably a lot of hard work in the company. And not only that, DJI also has its reality show with engineering students and graduates called Chaonan Likon Pai. With its own Jija Dashi anime, DJI seeks to create its empire with future generations of engineers. On the other hand we have Tencent, which in Chinese is Tenshun. And here we are in the Tencent company, which is one of the largest video game companies. Artificial intelligence is also dedicated to producing audio visuals and also everything in general related to technology and social networks. It owns one of the biggest record labels in the industry called Tencent Music, which owns 77% of the Chinese market share. The WeChat app is also Tencent's company, which is like a mix between WhatsApp, Facebook and a virtual wallet. And it also has many other functions. Everyone who uses smartphones in China has a WeChat account. And WeChat along with Alipay are two of the most widely used virtual payment methods in a country where practically no one uses cash anymore. Tencent also owns the largest audio-visual content streaming platform in the country, called Tencent Shipping, which is similar to the idea of Netflix, where you don't necessarily have to pay a subscription to access the content. And there is also the version of the international platform called WeTV. As for video games, Tencent has 100% shares in games like League of Legends and Valorant. And it controls 40% of Epic Games, the Fortnite company and many others. Then we have the Huawei company, which despite the trade war with the United States, in 2020 Huawei has become the company that sells the most smartphones in the world. This year it dethroned its strongest competitor, the Korean company Samsung, although the results may change again for 2021 with the blocking of Google Play. The recipe for success of Huawei phones consists of low prices, large screens and super powerful cameras. However, the company does not only sell smartphones, but advances in all areas of telecommunications. Huawei is the leader in the manufacture and sale of key technology for 5G telecommunications infrastructures, and this promises to be revolutionary. During 2019, Huawei filed 3,524 patent applications, making it the firm with the most applications in the world. The result of Huawei being at the top is due to the large investment that the company puts into its research and development area. Huawei allocates between 10 and 15% of its annual revenue to develop new technology. One of the most common criticisms leveled at China is that it is not known for innovation and that Chinese companies have not made major improvements or innovations in the industry like Western companies. However, Chinese companies have been key in re-engineering innovation processes so that the development of goods is faster and cheaper. Much of the goods and technologies that we currently buy at an affordable price is due to the fact that they are produced right here in China. The factory of the world started here in Shenzhen. In the beginning, China was just a big supplier of cheap and disciplined labor. Developed countries moved their factories to China to reduce their production costs and offer goods at competitive prices on the world market. China knew how to take advantage of this opportunity to learn and acquire the knowledge of foreign capital and thus industrialize the country. For many years, it has made a great effort so that the country stops being an exporter of low-cost goods to become a seller of high-tech products. In 2005, the government launched the Made in China 2025 plan, which has robotics, aerospace equipment, biomedicine, and high-speed rail as priority areas. In 2020 they launched a China Standards 2035 plan, which seeks technological self-sufficiency and for China to set global standards for the new generation of technology. China is criticized for copying, but after the learning, imitation stage and low-tech production, the country is already preparing to take off with its own technology. Of course, from the perspective of developed countries, it is not right for other countries to copy you, industrialize, equal you, and one day they may surpass you. If everyone did that, then they wouldn't be able to buy the leather from you and then sell you the shoes. Shenzhen is the city that best represents the Chinese economic miracle. It is the metropolis of the modernity of youth, of new technologies. China no longer wants to be the factory of the world. With Shenzhen as a model, China wants to become a country that innovates and produces cutting-edge technology. Here the Industrial Revolution 4.0 is already underway.
Si te gustó el video, no te olvides de darle like, suscribirte y compartir el video. También me puedes ayudar en Patreon para poder dedicarle más tiempo a la creación de estos videos que me llevan mucho trabajo. Nos vemos en la próxima. Adiós, 再见.